How you doing?
International Harvester.
You live?
Is he?
Yep.
The guy who.
Okay, good evening. It's 6:30. I'm going to call the order meeting number 1897 of the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. We are here at Broadbrook Elementary School as well as on the Zoom platform. I'm going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cheers.
Okay, we have a quorum. We have 4 regular members, as well as 1 alternate. Wayne, I'll ask you to sit in on any voting you may be taking this evening.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Do we have any other agenda items?
No.
Okay. There was no legal notice, so we are at the public participation portion of our meeting. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to comment on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Mr. Anderson.
Paul Anderson, 89 Main Street, Broadbrook. Okay, well, it's on the agenda because it's printed there, but this is not room 5A. This is room A5. There is no 5A in this school. And that's the second time we've seen this. It should be corrected.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's okay. But my real comment is, and I'll be harping on this probably every meeting, pro-business. Zoning is not pro-business. The town in general is not pro-business. There's a lot of things happening in town that are anti-business. We have properties, businesses on Route 5 that have these wavy open signs. And they always have them. And then other businesses put up a wavy open sign and they get cited and said, you have to take it down while I'm standing here. We have selective zoning enforcement, which is unacceptable. Either everybody gets screwed or nobody gets screwed. But the whole thing is stupid because on Route 5, signage doesn't mean squat. 140, it doesn't matter. These are business areas and businesses have to function. So we need to work on regulations to say in these areas, they're different than other places in town. And that's not what we have. That is anti-business. So I would like to see some changes brought to the table to be worked on to make it better. We need more business. We're voting on a budget today and it's a horror story. We don't have enough business. Everybody's complaining about the cost of taxes. They don't know what they're talking about, but it doesn't matter. We need other people to pay our taxes. That's how we do it. We need to get as much business in town in the proper areas that we can possibly have, and we need to make it easy for them. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anyone online that would like to comment on the topic that's not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, moving on. Approval of minutes. A special meeting held on May 29. Does anyone have any edits or corrections?
I did not.
I have, it's the same error throughout. It's a spelling error. That needs to be fixed. Lines 107, 128, and 131 in reference to the siting council. Siting should be SITING. It says siting, SIGHTING. It's probably an autocorrect.
Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 13, 2025 planning and zoning meeting 1896, with the aforementioned changes of the respelling of citing throughout the document.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Stacy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. Receipt of applications, we have none. Performance bonds, we have none. Any public hearings, we have none. And new public hearings, we have none. At this point, I would ask if someone would give a motion. I'd like to take new business out of order and hear that next versus continuing with old business. So would somebody be willing to offer a motion to take new business out of order?
I'll make a motion that we take new business out of order before old business.
We have a motion to take new business out of order. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we will take new business next. It's PZ 2025-10. The applicant owner is Scott Coda, requesting site plan modification to extend the back driving surface to allow for additional turning radius in the building located at 124 Newberry Road, map 104, block 19, block 50. Zone is a B3.
I can compare.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's try that. Okay, excellent. Oh, my God.
Plus, we have a copy.
Yeah,
Okay. I'll point up here then. That's okay.
So who is here to speak on behalf of Senator?
I'm sorry, thank you. Art Christian, I'm a professional engineer, registered in Connecticut. I'm hired by Mr. Coda to present this and to do the work that's on. So one of the things, we moved to that. Oh. Okay, so this is the plan of proposed conditions. One of the things that we had was we extended this back just a little bit, probably 15 feet or so. Mr. Coda, after he got in the building, figured out that with this milling surface here, he couldn't actually make the turns into any of the bays in the back of the garage without doing like a 7-point turn. So, because they're a little bit longer trucks. So he wanted to move that back, you know, as we were doing things anyway. In doing that, there was a detention basin through here. So I modified it. I was able to modify the detention basin and actually keep the old outlet structure that flows into the wetlands. And here's the pond. Here's the pond that's there now. So we were able to keep that. We can keep that structure in place. Everything else would be the same. We'd actually put 2 catch basins here to catch some water, surface water that's off the top here, because it used to flow right into the detention basin. Of course, we didn't want to have detention basin over here anymore. We wanted it to be in the corner to avoid the wetlands. So if we pull this up a little bit, so I want to look at this part. A little bit that way still. Oh, no, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Slide it that way.
Slide it that way. Okay. So this is the front of the property, and basically we wanted to make this a gravel storage area for construction equipment. It would come up to about here. It would be probably about half of this area, and the rest of it, you can see the line here. This would be gravel, and from here over would be grassed. But a little bit just look at the contours a little bit flattened. There's a little bit of a high spot here. So we take that high spot out. So this would still keep flowing. It'd flow all the way into this ditch that we have on the side and into another detention basin we have in this corner, which is adjacent to the back property line. Thank you. So you can see the back property line, you can see the new detention basin. This was for wetlands, but the only place we actually intruded into the wetlands was this one extension to the pipe because we wanted to come down and try to hit this contour here, this 61 contour. So we had, in order to do that, we had to hit it here, and then we can have the bottom of this be 62, so we could store our water in there. I did meet the the runoff requirements, so there's no additional flow. I mean, between this flow and this detention basin, this flow and this detention basin, the water coming out of the pond, and I had a design point in here. At that point, pre-existing conditions now and post-work conditions, there was a lesser flow going out here for those conditions. For the 2-year, it's just a little bit less than, a tenth of a CFS, so cubic foot per second. But for the larger storms, there was even more detention. So it actually is helping any flooding there is in this brook for 10, 25, and 100-year storms. As part of my analysis. And so it basically had to be with storage and the back of the building being widened. Those were my additional impervious areas. One of the things that happens is gravel, when it's compacted, even though it can have some water, it's just for engineering purposes and for runoff purposes, assume that it's impervious. So we kind of collect all that water and say it's going to run off. And I think that's my presentation.
You proposing any kind of pretreatment?
No, what we do have though is, no, because running off the gravel we felt was, and then it would run off, and this would be grassed in here. So there was, basically if it was pavement, we probably would have done some sort of buffer or grassed buffer. But because it was gravel, we didn't do that. And it's not going to be really a driving surface. We do have this detention basin actually has a grassed bottom to it, a wetland plantings bottom, which would be the pre-treatment that we get from there. And actually, even the other one will have a grass wetland plantings bottom. So I guess we do have some pre-treatment.
Are you proposing storing on the grass area?
So at the moment, he really thinks he can store on this area, but we're gonna make this area so, and we are asking for permission to store on there if at some point it comes to that.
Then it becomes a driving surface.
Yeah, well, and I think, yeah. Yes, but we won't change the surface of it. So,
Rut up what's there then.
yes, we'll probably put a hard bottom on it, and then rut up the topsoil if we do drive on it after. I think his thought was that, he'd rather, he has to come before the commission. It's an expensive operation to get it. He wanted to ask for both the purpose, but he also didn't want to see it gravel right away either.
Can I gravel it if he's going to store on it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think,
The ask is 40,800 square feet of gravel pad,
okay.
which I think is that whole area, grass and gravel.
Yes, I do think that too. Yeah, because that's an acre. He was not gonna gravel that though.
But your request is for that much area.
For that much area, and let me just look at the dimensions quick. Yeah, no, you're right. And I don't have the application in front of me. I thought when I wrote up the application, I asked for 20,000 square feet of gravel storage area and 20,000 square feet of grass storage area.
40,800 gravel.
Okay, okay. Do you remember that at all? As far as, did we ask for, this is Scott Coda, sorry. Yeah, so this area was gravel. But you never planned on making this gravel afterwards. I mean, you're just gonna keep, it's grass.
Grass, no.
It's grass now. I didn't plan on, and if I messed up the numbers, I don't have my scale on me. But if I messed up the numbers, I'm sorry. I really was asking for this for gravel and this for grass in the back.
If you go to, I'm just gonna change it to sheet 2.
Okay,
It shows this separation.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah. But I thought it was 20,000 and 20,000. I just scaled the truck by and bring it in.
I had scaled it, and that's what I was thinking.
Hmm?
What, I had scaled it, and it looked like it was happening now.
Okay, that's what I had meant to. I made out the permit application, and that's what I always intended. I'm sorry if it got lumped together. And it might, but do you mind me? Okay, thank you. That's what I wrote. Yeah. Well, I'm not questioning you, but I'd always in my head,
I guess then my question is, do you want to modify that number down to the 20,000?
or do we want to keep it at 40,000 for graveling the whole thing? But we don't, you never really want to gravel that. If you end up parking, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just, it just depends on what I need for storage. So I'm
Okay.
just trying to start off, with what we need now. And then,
Then you have a conflict with what your drawings are.
okay, so why is there a conflict?
Could be,
Because currently your drawings show 20,000 square feet of gravel, but your application says you want 40,000 square feet of gravel. So there's your conflict.
So,
So theoretically, it doesn't matter.
yeah, I mean, so we had always talked about 20,000 here and 20,000 here of grass, with a gravel base underneath it, but still grassed on top. So that if you needed to drive on it, I mean, you wouldn't get stuck. You would just run up the grass.
Correct.
So you would strip it, gravel it, and then put topsoil over the top of the gravel?
Yeah, well, we're gonna strip it anyway because we wanna flatten it out. There's a big high spot there. And depending on what we found underneath, depending on what kind of soils were underneath, I thought we'd put something underneath it that was drivable and then put gravel back, topsoil back on top of it.
Yeah, I understand if you already gravel it, why put the topsoil back on it?
I mean, I always thought it was,
Or do you need that in order to meet your stormwater runoff?
no, I wasn't doing it for stormwater. I was really doing the grass because,
So wait a minute, if we gravel this whole thing.
Mhm.
We're also, it doesn't matter because our stormwater is based on that. Right? We have.
yeah,
So it doesn't matter. So
Yeah, what I was
trying
trying
to
to
say, as far as our detention pond size and all that stuff, we're covered. If we gravel the whole thing. Is what I was trying to get.
with this is I said, if you were gonna leave that topsoil and grass and then store things on there,
Mhm.
drive equipment over it and rut it up, and now you're gonna be adding more, total dissolved solids, particulates, everything else into your runoff because it turns into mud soup.
No, I mean, my objective was because the way we're moving the detention pond, you guys saw how we're moving the detention pond because we don't have enough
the one
room
up front, yeah.
to get around the back. We don't have enough storage in the back of the building right
I understand.
So we're trying to make this just so we can get cleaned up, get our back the way we need it, make this so we have room to store our stuff. And then as we go forward, if we need to add more storage, then we just will add more gravel. If we want to do another 100 feet or 50 feet.
You don't intend to store stuff on dirt and grass?
No, as we need storage,
Okay.
Wasn't.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
we're
that.
just gonna if we need more, we'll add more as we go along. So I just want to have it all in here so that down the road, we don't have a conflict with if I end up putting more gravel and running down with more storage, then it's not, we're already covered. I just want everything in there ahead of time.
I would suggest a notation on plan be made,
Okay,
instead of grassed area for storage.
future
Gravel.
gravel area. Yeah, we can definitely add that to,
Yeah, that's, that's,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see you storing stuff on the
No.
grass and.
Then you have to come back in again and again and again.
yeah, well, that's what we were trying to avoid, but, it was actually my misinterpretation with Scott, that led to this. So, but I appreciate that, and we can certainly put that on the plans.
Do you have any questions?
No, that's, then he signed off and everything and change that from grass to gravel. Your future down the road to do what you want to do back there. I'm good.
Dave?
My concern is landscape buffer from 120 to 124. There's zero landscape buffer on the backside from 120 to 124. Your landscape buffer runs from the street halfway down your building with a berm, buried trees, certainly not to the landscape specs that we have in town. And you run the backside of it from halfway down your building to the back of your property line is not one piece of landscape buffer.
We're on the left side over here.
Between 120 and 124 on your right-hand side. Between you and the Scorpion Fasteners.
Well, that's what this is, right?
Yeah,
You have no landscape buffer.
Well, I guess we didn't add one this
Oh,
time.
around the other detention pond.
No, along the property lines. There's supposed to be a landscape buffer.
Yeah, we hadn't, there wasn't one originally.
It wasn't on the
and
original
that-
plan when we
Well,
went
that
through.
really construction.
Doesn't mean that you can't have it now. We're supposed to
Well,
have
we actually
a
have. a bunch of-
landscape. You do in the front, but it's supposed to be around all sides,
Well, it goes down about almost to the front of the building.
but that's not far enough.
That's fine.
So we've got to,
I think on industrial, you said
I just went through it.
industrial. Yeah, I thought you did. She's gonna look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because originally when we had the fence, we were supposed to be a white vinyl fence across the front and I changed it to a berm with some trees on it.
And that's okay. You have something across. the
Right, but I'm saying
If there's not,
On the original plan, there was nothing down that side. When we did this 2 years ago, there was nothing on the side at all. I added the berm down farther on my own. It wasn't even part of the plan. I just did it just for better, because people coming down Newberry Road and stuff like that, it just kind of blocks everything and helps hide everything.
yeah, exactly. From your neighbors. Exactly. Yes.
So it's technically not a landscape buffer, it's perimeter trees that it needs.
I apologize. Wrong verbiage. Perimeter.
So
trees.
perimeter trees are required
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, there's one pine tree where we stopped.
every
And-
50 feet, so.
Yeah.
The range is every 50 feet.
For the construction area or the whole property line?
Whole property line.
If there's already vegetation that typically can, like if there's tree, if there's.
There's like one big pine tree where we stopped the berm.
I would say with the exception of going through the wetland.
Okay. Well, we can go quite a ways past the detention area, until we get to the last probably 100 feet without actually being in the wetlands. I think we'd have to change tree type or something if we went all the way back.
Well, I may extend this berm that's here anyways,
Okay.
at
Okay.
least down to, down to the back of the building to the pond area.
Yeah. Okay.
So if
And then
we
we
have to
can, then we can
some
put trees, some trees in
along
there.
the side.
Yeah.
We can throw some trees in there or something.
Yeah, we're,
Well, for.
Yeah,
These two aren't.
well, you said they want to extend the berm also.
Right.
Yeah, so then we're now into like three things that are not on the drawings that you need to add to the.
Okay.
Kind of,
Extend the berm
So what he was talking about was taking the berm, he does extend it, about a quarter of the building, but he was thinking about extending it to the back of the building now because of the comments. And we could certainly do that.
And then use the material out of here.
Yeah.
Just build the berm. coming
And
down
then
The
you know,
last,
I
whatever.
kind of propose putting trees at 50 feet until the wetlands. I don't really want to go into the wetlands and put trees if I can help it.
I would worry a little bit about what's happening with the drainage on that side of the building,
Okay,
putting a berm in there, because I think there's a swale on that side.
okay.
Where, on my side?
On this side.
Yeah, there's a swale up by the building. The berm's
Is
on,
it?
the berm's on the high
Right in
side.
the property line.
Yeah, the berm's part of the property layer. Swales on the other side between the berm and the.
Well, we'll check that and make out. We don't want to force the water to the neighbors and we want to let anything that's pocketed there getting back into the detention basin.
So you better have to throw in 4 or 5 trees and call it a day.
Just,
Yeah, okay.
we're at the point, if you do want to berm, we have to send it back to our town engineer for review.
Okay, let's do that. We'll just add trees
That's
along this area and no, we won't extend the berm.
Yeah, there's a pine tree there. So at the end of it, we can just add from that.
Yep.
And keep going.
Okay.
Did you have anything else?
No, that was my first main thing.
You see, Wayne, you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious, who set the boundaries for the wetland?
Well, we have actually had, he's on the front sheet, Richard Zulik came up. And because there had been, maybe it's no. Oh, you have an old set. I'm sorry. The set that's on the table was my original submission. I had, Rick Zulik come out
Okay.
after that and he added something. And then these are the plans that we're gonna leave with. But he did come out just for this because, we knew there'd been some
Yeah.
discrepancies with the wetlands or some questions about the actual wetlands boundaries
We already went
today.
through wetlands, so. We already been through wetlands.
Yeah, we've already been through wetlands, but it's a good question. They didn't even catch that in wetlands. Of course, maybe Danielle already knew that, so.
You had your new plans that day.
And she had the,
Yeah.
yeah, Yeah.
There.
yes. Oh, yeah, you were her that day.
Only question. That's it.
Can I add a couple comments to my memo?
Certainly.
Since writing the memo, I talked to the fire marshal. In support of the changes. When the ability back then, we didn't have any issues. And as you just heard last week, the application was approved by the Inland Agency.
The building inspector made a comment about screening. Were you able to resolve that?
Yeah, the building official made comments, I think, looking at it from a special use, or like a use angle rather than a site plan mod. So, yeah.
So is that something new? The building inspector is looking at our stuff now? That's something new?
He has, probably for the last year or so.
Okay. Everybody's questions been satisfied? So what do we need to modify to this memorandum?
Yes, that,
Outdoor storage and grass to gravel,
yeah,
and then perimeter trees every 50 feet.
and then,
Where's this from?
I would think before the storage happens, that the engineer goes back out and
Yeah.
make sure everything gets built the way.
Yeah, they don't usually publish that. They,
Okay, so we're gonna have that under,
With that,
is that gonna be prior to issuance of permit?
So that's, isn't that always, somebody always will look at everything after it's done, or Joe or somebody? After
get
the,
a CO on a site plan.
at the drainage, don't they usually? No?
We'll get an as-built. Could do it that way.
Or conditions prior to issuance of certificate of compliance?
It'd be a sign off and the applicant's engineer. Built to specification.
As-built is done by.
They will be doing the as-built anyway, so.
And that is 16 here.
You're 18 now.
Okay, just so we're all on the same page, so.
16 outdoor storage. Gravel. Outdoor storage for grass.
That is the plan.
Yeah, so
so I was gonna say, if we were gonna put revise the plans, it would come higher,
Yes,
rather than have that be a general condition. So I would put it up. Conditions with what must be met prior to the submittal of final plans. Plans should be revised.
5.
So it would end up being. I put 5 there.
So,
Plan shall be revised. To note. Future gravel area.
Okay,
Then second revision would be to show, perimeter trees.
is it going to call that, it's number 6 then? Perimeter trees will be added?
Yep, number 6.
but really add that to the revision too. I mean,
Correct.
makes sense, yeah.
So how about 5A and B?
So it's gonna be 5A and 5B.
Yeah.
We're making 16 the,
16.
okay,
Got bumped, so now it's gonna be 17.
17 will be, is it grades can be verified or what are we gonna apply that?
Oh, we don't. That the applicant's engineer shall certify the installation of the drainage system prior to use. Or we'll do that of this outdoor storage area.
That was in here to what?
Should certify,
The installation of the drainage system prior to use of the outdoor storage.
Okay.
okay. And good, we got everything we need? Nobody else has anything else, we wanna ask or discuss, we'll entertain a motion on this application?
Yeah, I'll make them to approve, right? Motion to approve PZ 2025-10 site plan modification to modify the site plan that was part of with the April 13th, 2021 special use permit approved under application PZ 2021-9. Modification includes the extension of the driving surface behind the existing building to facilitate additional radii for vehicles turning into the building. The construction of a 48,800 square foot gravel pad to facilitate the outdoor storage of equipment. The addition of a stormwater swale, detention basin to reduce runoff of the site post-development. Finding, no change in the previous approved use of the property as the contractor's office and storage yard proposed or approved. The approval is granted subject to conformance with the reference plans and may be modified by the commission. And the following conditions being met: reference documents and plans 1 through 2. Conditions which must be met prior to submittal of final plans 1 through 5A and B, which 5A states, plans shall be revised to note future gravel area. And that's 5A, and 5B, trees to be added every 50 feet. Is that right? And then conditions which must be met prior to the insurance of any permits, which will be number 5 through 7. And then condition must be met prior to the insurance certificate of compliance, number 8. And then general conditions 9 through, how do you get 16? Why is 17, not 16?
We added 5,
So that's 16, okay.
and everything will trickle down.
Okay.
So 9 through 17, at 17 stating applicant's engineer to certify the
Installation.
installation of the drainage system to the storage area
Prior.
prior to use. I butchered that pretty good, but anyways,
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Dave. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing now, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Your approval.
Thank you. Dan, I'm gonna leave these, we gotta change them anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just take them. My kid can call on, my grandkids, sorry. My kids don't want to call on. They're 4 and stuff. No coloring.
New wrapping paper, right?
Huh?
New wrapping paper.
Yeah, new wrap, that's right.
It's getting planted.
That's right.
Gifts this year.
Giant placement. Thank you. Hey, Greg. All this was just on the table. But I was gonna slide it.
They are now gonna go back to old business. We have a draft text changes regarding solar.
The one with the advanced stamp on it. This is a revisit, of what we talked about before, but before I send it off to CROG for review, I wanted to go over a couple of things with you. With changes to the regulations, there would be a need for changes to definitions. So I'm proposing, a definition for solar energy system. Standard, a system that collects or stores solar radiation or energy for the purpose of transforming it into another form of usable energy, including but not limited to the collection and transfer of heat created by solar energy to any other medium by other means. And then I have roof or building mounted solar energy system. A solar energy system attached or mounted to any roof or exterior wall of any principal or accessory building primarily to meet the needs of on-site users. Ground-mounted solar energy system, a solar system that's not attached to or mounted on any roof or exterior wall of any principal or accessory building to meet the needs of on-site users. Then on the next page, I have a question for all of you. We had talked about putting in a prohibition statement for solar. However, our regulations are set up that if a use is not permitted, it is prohibited. And so to put a statement in is, to me, feels counter to how we use our regulations.
Well,
So I'm just posing it out there. If we're saying if it's not listed, it's not allowed.
Yeah, we're saying,
Then
we're just,
you're calling it out that it's
we're
not
just
permitted
calling it
now.
out, yeah, and
But you don't do it other times. You just,
well, it's almost, it's almost like this would need to be put in at the beginning of our regulations.
That is, this
Okay.
is.
Okay, so that is at the very
Very
beginning.
front.
Okay, not just in, all right. I know where this came from because and I attended the Board of Selectmen meeting when they hired the attorney to represent us on gravel pit solar. The discussion that was brought up that we, in my previous siting council decision, it said that we didn't say that we prohibited it. And the argument was made that, well, if it's not there, it's not allowed. The siting council wanted us to see that it said it's prohibited, you know, kind of deal. So
That's what say it, we can do it. If you don't say we can't do it, we can do it.
well, then it's kind of like, well, you know, maybe you would allow it if we presented the right case to you or something.
Yes, leaves the door open.
I think that's where that came from.
I can put a statement in, just, it'll be an oddity.
No, I know that we're trying to build a stack of, these are all the things that we have stated that we are, you know,
Yeah, that's why I put the question out
Yeah.
there, because I, gave me, I'm on the cars saying,
It's the only one I didn't hear spawning. I heard it for the rooftop.
yes, it's
it wasn't in the other one, you're right. The, I can insert that. So, I think what Mr. Anderson had said, on the roof or building mounted solar energy system, it says primarily to meet the needs of on-site users. The word primarily.
oh,
is
we're
in-
missing the word primarily. Okay.
Just so I'm clear, you want a statement? The third page in. This was 301.4 solar energy systems. That was something we were gonna strike
That gave some flexibility to the
front yard.
zoning enforcement officer.
Mhm.
Kind of muddies the waters.
And then, something we did not talk about, but that came up as I was working on the draft order. 304, uses permitted in any zone. I wanted to clarify that 304D, where it says public utility facilities. I added, where parenthetically, right now it says not to be interpreted as infrastructure. And I wanted to put or power generation facilities.
Because that was originally intended for POTW uses, right? If they needed to put a pump station in, if they needed to put something,
Yeah, I don't know.
sewer, you know.
Really just trying to underscore.
Yeah, yeah.
all
Any
on
loophole,
purpose,
any
but-
loophole, that-
Yeah, if
yeah,
I.
I get you.
Yeah. So. And then. So what we're saying about rooftop solar and ground mounted solar is that they're accessory to a principal use. So I did not add them to any portion of the principal use charts. That added them to, accessory buildings and structures. So 403 now has a 5 being proposed that says rooftop and ground mounted solar energy systems where power generated is primarily for on-site use or consumption. And that's 400 is in the residential. So then in the 500 section, which is for the business, commercial, industrial, they actually do have a chart for permitted accessory use.
That's okay. I read through this thing.
I just wanted to give you the whole chart. This will come on the bottom. I'm proposing to add in any zone in the commercial, industrial, business zones. You could have rooftop or ground mounted solar systems accessory to the primary use. And generated power is primarily for on-site use and consumption. It's the same thought. Those are all the changes I went through, like where they would fit based on the feedback the commission gave at the last meeting. Unless you have additional changes, this is what I would put in a petition and send it up to CROG for review and schedule a hearing.
Does anybody run?
Well, I'm good with this.
Like this.
I think we kind of don't leave any wiggle room for,
Yeah, as far as the language goes, I really like the phrasing where you end with energy systems where power generated is primarily for on-site use or consumption. I think that reads really well. I think it reads a little bit better than what we have in the definition. I don't know if you'd consider going when you end with any principal accessory building instead of primarily lead off with where power generated is primarily for on-site use or consumption. That's just my 2 cents. I think it
Lead
reads
off
smoother.
instead of ending.
or use that same verbiage.
Yeah,
Wow.
use the scene where power generated, insert that and strike this primarily part so that it just, because, if someone without a comma there, they're gonna say,
Yeah.
there's a little,
Grandmother didn't. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's clear. This
Yeah.
The roof of building mounted solar system and the ground mounting, should you include as per building code so that it follows some guidelines other than you can build it?
They have to get a building permit to do it.
It doesn't say that.
That's just,
And
that's
the
just-
zoning reg-
that's the, yeah.
That building,
Yeah, I'm
They
just
they
I'm
have
just
to, they
saying,
have to get a building.
I'm just pointing out, should it say that? I know they have to do it, but I'm just a thought.
Yeah. I think that you would have to say it on everything, because.
Yeah, we're just defining uses, not actually giving anybody permission to build it.
Okay, good point.
Think we got our final, I don't think we need to send it back to us one more time. I think we just make those tweaks and I think we're good to send it off the CROG. with those
I like
tweaks.
it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Stuff we have is discussion on zoning districts.
Yeah. Okay. So this is all related to the P O C D. Something else next. And Mike has done us a great service of into it.
Yeah.
He's created a map for us that actually shows zoning and what's actually out there, so that we can, it's really quite a nice tool. Once I knew.
I can make the map bigger, but I can't make the legend bigger. But I can run through the colors just so you can get a sense of it if you want. So this is, when people look at maps, the first thing they do is try to find something wrong with the map. So I'm gonna spoiler alert, there's something wrong with the map. This has been taken from land use codes from the assessor's office, which is also not perfect, right? You might have farms because it's on an ag program. You might have different things. It might be a farm that has a commercial business in it, so it's commercial. So there's going to be things not correct with this. But generally speaking, what we did is we symbolized the land use codes from the assessor to align with the categories in the zoning regs. So this shows you current land uses. To try to then, in the point, as Ruth was saying, is to look at your zoning map. Because the zoning map is what we want in the perfect world, which doesn't exist, right? The one, what we were talking about in the office last week is the Route 5. Route 5 is the TZ5 corridor, right? We have all these uses that are allowed and several uses that are not. So maybe you can, since that's something we can all point to because it's kind of easy to find. As I go through, I'll just run through the legend. So anything in white is single family. Anything in green is shown as vacant land. So you might have any number of things happening there. That could be a parcel behind a commercial building. It could be a parcel that's currently farmed but has no structure. There's a lot of things that go into that category, but it's not being used for some other purpose. Pink, the sort of pinkish purple is commercial. The dark greens is multifamily. Orange, the darker orange is industrial. The yellows are auto or gas related uses. So car wash, motor vehicle sales, gas stations, etc. They're hard to see here because they're not big parcels, but if you start looking, like if I come in over here, start seeing the darker, I don't even know, darker pinks. These are food service. The brown that you see here are municipal. And again, this in particular, because we might have municipal land that's open space, might not capture everything, but I tried to kind of ground truth as much as I can. We've got some other, which is like state-owned properties, which are the blue. And then I started to go through and convert anything that was clearly a farm into this very bright green. But that takes a lot of time. And then the gray, the sort of the dark grayish here, those are solar. So, you know, you have this, what do they have in front of them? The residential?
Just the future,
Yeah.
the future, well, the aspirations.
Yeah, okay. So what really stood out to me was Route 5, because you have, so again, you have commercial, which is pink, orange is industrial, then you have residential, single family, which is white, which is, you know, all around through here. Then you have multifamily. I think that we have municipal. I think that every single use category that we capture is on Route 5.
Yeah.
So, you know, to me, it was the one area that I think jumped out the most is sort of having everything. And then we've got.
Look at that study with Terry Hahn, she went down Route 5 and there was like a lot more houses than you think's on Route 5.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the components of the POCD, as we kind of talked about, is are there changes? And I can actually, I can go through and if I open the layers here, stupid Zoom toolbar. So if I turn off the current land use, I can turn off some of this other stuff. You can see, I don't think we want wetlands. So this is the current zoning map. So you can see how it changes between the two. Obviously, the colors are not perfectly aligned, but you start looking at, you know, the area on the right side of town, which is the R3. And then again, you start looking along Route 5. We've got like this here, all these parcels down in the lower, I can't see my cursor. These parcels down here, these gray, those are industrial. Those are all floodplain.
Yeah.
No one's doing anything there,
No.
but we have it as, please come do industrial. You know, and so there's definitely a lot of conflict between the current uses and what is there. And I think one of the questions that the commission needs to kind of think about is, do you want to put your thumb on the scale in some way? You have everything on Route 5. You could decide whatever you want it to be at this point because it's everything, right? Should we be encouraging certain things? Should we be discouraging other things? Do we want the southern half of Route 5 to continue to be known as the used car capital of the world? I don't know. Parking lots don't generate tax revenue and they don't generate jobs. So, you know, that's something that we can talk about. Do we want to, I think the TZ5 prohibits residential.
So you guys know how the Route 5 started with Larry Trimble and the auction and Southern Auto, and then it grew and grew and grew and grew, and then
Yep.
now it's kind of like on a decline. So problem is we don't own all the property.
It's true.
So the TZ5 is to allow existing residential areas to transition in an orderly means to commercial area.
So one kind
Development of.
So as they go.
Minimal impacts on existing residential development.
Yeah. And that's always something to look into because that's, that's times have changed. It's not the use capital of the world, but they used to be number one taxpayer in town years ago. Now they're five, whatever they are, I don't know the number.
One of the things that I remember reading and spending a lot of time kind of thinking about as we've submitted different things for the last couple of years is what Route 5 is going to be from a non-vehicular standpoint, from a pedestrian standpoint. And there's one approach, which is it's not meant to be a pedestrian corridor. So sidewalks and bike lanes and all these things are not necessarily feasible because of speeds and the right of way widths, but also it's our main commercial artery. It's not necessarily a place where people are going to be. But then if you start looking at, the current land use, I mean, there's some pretty high densities in here, multifamily, you have small residential lots, all up and down here, all these greens and whites are all residential. So you have some fairly high concentrations. I mean, you got it here, all these dark green parcels of high density housing, which exists. I think we have one bus stop on Route 5 right now on the northern side. So whether you like it or not, you have high density housing around Route 5. Which I thought was kind of an interesting point since it's not,
Well, the most interesting point that I'll tell you from the P O C D and the residential growth chart. On this map, it's a non-residential area. So it's like
the TZ5.
the Route 5 corridor, right?
You guys will share.
This one, I think at the last P O C D that you did, you didn't change this plan. I think it was adopted in 06 and not amended.
There's a ton of like apartment complexes built off the road you dare really see. There's 6 or 7 of them over there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Yeah, my shop right over there. I drive there every day on this road. The mess.
which, Route 5?
Route 5.
Yeah.
All of them that's going on, high schools going out, but
Yeah, I mean, I know it's
We're gonna
hard to
see-
see, but.
With the planned commercial development, we're gonna see mixed use.
Well, and one of the easiest ways to circumvent the extremely complicated components of the MFDD is to be on Route 5, because the MFDD says you've got to be on Route 5 in a parcel of a certain acreage to be able to get that apartment density. So, which is exactly in conflict with,
With the current.
it's very haphazard, and that's reflected in the current land use, because it's everything. And maybe that's fine. There's nothing that says it has to be wrong, but we should think about how to
future.
adjust the regs so that a lot of this stuff isn't non-conforming if you're saying it's okay that it's there.
So TZ5 allows everything but residential or?
It's what
Uh,
we have legal non-conforming residential, right?
yeah, let's see where. Let's see.
So much more. It's gonna have above, I think it's the residential above the commercial.
It's, not the principal.
It's just these two. described.
It's not really long.
Right here, point. Oh, that's just the purpose of it.
All right, so is there anything as of right in TZ5? I see farming. That's about it. That's the only thing I see that's as of right. So if the whole Route 5 corridor is TZ5 and everything in TZ5 is a special use permit, so I guess it kind of looks as,
It's not the whole corridor. Hold on, let me go to the current, the zoning. I think parts of it, I think have been changed. It's the light tan. Here. Change. Yeah.
that's the only section that's
I'm
TZ5?
gonna go to the official map just to see, because I think the first zone change I did when I was here was a change of the TC5.
That was just like from Bridge Street to.
It's not allowed.
Yeah, so
It's not allowed.
it's that center section there. That is the TC.
And that's the only section that we have that's TZ5.
I think there's been some other changes, but like using this, using this parcel as an example, I think the intent was, or on the left side of the road, you have this TZ5 in the front, and then you have commercial, and then you have ag. And the idea was that they would all sort of, play in the sandbox together, but I think what you'll see and what we've kind of seen, and if you analyze the uses, the first use that develops on the parcel gets the zone.
Yeah.
Right? They take the whole thing. They don't say, okay, we're gonna come farther back to let the front be retail because we're gonna be, so it's not really, I think, landed exactly.
So the overall goal is to try to make Route 5 more conforming than what it is now.
I think the goal is to make sure that your future land use map is still pointing in the right direction. And I don't think there's an error on the compass when it comes to TZ5 at this point, because there's kind of everything that's there. And like we've talked about it, that may not be bad, but we have to either adjust the regs to match the direction we're headed right now, or we need to kind of realign the.
Well, what would be the downfall of making the entire Route 5 corridor TZ5? And amending our TZ5, making residential a special use permit. And then you basically come with us with whatever ideas you have.
So maybe you're thinking of like a more flexible TZ5.
Right.
Not sort of the front half will be this and the back half. will
No,
be
just
that.
if you could make a case of something that would conform to the area and would.
Or enhance the area.
So
Yeah.
let's, for instance, somebody has a residence. And they want to open up an auto salvage business. And like,
And that's not allowed in any zone currently.
I'm just, if that,
Driveway.
Yeah,
No.
no, I know.
Like,
No, that's how we have to think of what's the worst case scenario.
right, like the.
Well, I mean, it's
That's real stuff,
yeah.
right? And so now we're at a point where, okay. How do you?
Not stop.
Well, then you could do it with, okay, you need, X amount of acreage, you need so many buffers, you need, all that stuff. Total containment system.
But would you allow someone to live at the commercial establishment like that in a house?
Mixed
No.
use. It's mixed use, though. We encourage that. We encourage mixed use, business on the first floor, people living on the second floor, we encouraged it.
Right, but it's a house with the backyard.
Yep. So
I know
it's the difference between that and living above your gun store.
How do you want your main drag to look? I guess is the question.
Well,
The architectural piece, I mean, I know you've been through all the surveys and studies on
Looks like a car lot.
preferred looks.
Does look very industrial right now.
I think that one of the things, I can't remember when we were talking about, but a lot of the buildings and a lot of the sites just need to be scraped and invested in. And so you're not gonna have someone buy a use of X and say, I'm gonna demo the building, scrape the site clean and rebuild the same use. It doesn't happen.
No.
So the only way to do that is to try to transition to a different use that kind of would encourage some of that reinvestment. And I think that's the only way you're gonna see some of those buildings really shift, because you don't have open land anymore. We're always looking at parcels. There's not a lot of fresh green or open.
You're saying that in a nice way too. I know what you're
Yeah.
thinking. I know a lot of buildings on that should be.
rehabilitated.
But people have to
Real-
go. Yeah. If they're not letting it go.
There's a lot of. Been here a long time. There's a lot of stuff over there that's.
Well, that's just it. There's no continuity, there's no flow. You can go from a farm stand to an industrial. There's everything on Route 5 you can imagine is all there.
And then some.
Uh-huh. How do you, you're talking generations to change it.
Gotta start somewhere, I guess.
And where do you wanna?
Well, I mean, that's,
That's where.
I was trying to
see
go
where we're
towards,
at.
yeah.
I could start from
Look at-
Walmart, work my way right down, about 30 parcels before I got to high school.
And having this say. No, this isn't non-residential area.
For all the
What
residents.
do we mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
if, again,
Because we've got the planned commercial development eligibility. Right? And residential's in the list of mixed use that goes with that.
Maybe we need some sidewalks.
It's like sidewalks. Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna bring this up toward the end of the meeting, but maybe this is a good time to talk about is the new legislation that's waiting for the governor to sign. Is it 5002?
Mhm.
If that goes through, you can put residential anywhere, regardless of our zoning.
Yeah, middle density, 2 to 9 units on any lot zone. Well, you have to, it has to be allowed
Part of your plan.
if, by right on any lot zone for commercial. I don't know if the bill defines commercial.
I
Everything that I've heard,
Rob reviewed that at the last meeting and they pretty much said it goes anywhere regardless of zoning. That's was their interpretation of it.
right, but yeah, I don't know if there's a definition of what is defined as commercial. I have heard a whole lot about him not signing it. I haven't heard a lot about him signing.
The news that I read today was in the Mailer, I think.
Yep.
That he, was looking for some
Some tweaks,
changes,
but if they legislate,
but either
the
quick
legislation goes
revise
back, yeah.
or, yeah, special session to revise.
So
CCM issued a statement in opposition today, I think, and so did Cost. So I think it's unlikely he'll sign it as is, but what he'll ask to do, I don't know.
So that, well, then the other big part of that too was the no parking requirements.
Oh, well,
Mhm.
yeah.
And their Prog's vision is what's wrong with having residential that has no parking in it? And they put up examples of places out in Arizona and things like that. There's nobody owns a car. Everybody uses, you know, bicycles and public
So
transport.
me and Mike are on that meeting and that's what they're talking about. They're like, if you want to build 300 units, no vehicles, no parking.
So,
Residential
We're
parking is self,
You're right.
more self-regulated,
Seattle.
yeah.
But what they want to do in West Hartford, they're talking about West Hartford.
but it's, the market, it's pretty, they know how much parking they need based upon those unit mixes. You're not gonna spend tens of millions of dollars on a building to then have tenants not be able to park. Just like you're not gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a space of commercial that no one can get to, right? It would be poor business decision to occupy a space, sell it to the planning and zoning commission, oh yeah, we've got enough parking, and then not, because you're gonna lose business. It just,
Well, that's why they kind of said,
yeah,
take it out of our hands and let the
Correct.
developer be the one say, well,
Right.
you know what? You
Right.
built it that way. So be it. Now live with it. So I just, there's possibilities that the one I was thinking about was right away, the one across from the children's place. If they wanted to go with 300 units and all of a sudden parking restrictions are lifted, do they now go 600?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that doubles their construction costs, but.
doubles their
But they're
return.
But the fact that the people living here are not going to have,
Nah.
you're not gonna have everybody in no car because they don't have the access to transit, they don't have, so.
Well, they're talking the rail system coming right across.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot more people that are happy to use those things if they're available, but that the majority won't, because they just don't have it.
Yeah.
Infrastructure's not here yet.
It was an eye opener to like, okay, if we're getting these regulations coming our way.
Yeah.
Interesting. But, the biggest thing that stuck in my head on that whole meeting was when they were talking about, you know, as of right, affordable housing. They called it almost like,
Workforce.
no, they called it like fairness doctrine type thing. They use the word fair share.
That's the reference to the plan, right? Fair share.
So fair share is a very nice term to apply towards solar, isn't it? If fair share applies to housing, why shouldn't fair share apply to solar?
Different subcommittees of the legislature.
Well,
That's a
I
good
think,
point.
I think it's a good precedent if they want to say that, you know, all these towns need to do their fair share. There's a lot of other things that they need to do their fair share.
It's a good point.
I mean, it took us a little off track of this, but that kind of.
I was gonna say that for the end of the
Yeah,
meeting.
me too. I don't know. So what's the lesser of two evils? Changing our allowable in TZ5 and making it all TZ5, or trying to figure out a way to somehow unify all these patchwork of zones, or
Well,
what's more doable?
I think you could maybe start by examining the use table for the commercial TZ5, you know, and kind of go through and cherry pick the uses you think should stay and the uses you think should go. Or maybe large categories of uses that need to be made into subcategories. Not to keep picking on auto-related, there's a lot of auto-related uses, right? It's easy.
Yeah, rather than just saying.
You can have car sales, you can have mechanic, you can have light, limited repair, general repair. So there may be dealers, you know, or auction, or there may be some portions of those uses which are great and some portions you want to move away from. So maybe it's trying to look at the table and thinking about the, in totality, you know, coming up with a new column, and we'll just think of that as 5.
We have to accomplish this before our finalizing the P O C D.
I think that the POs, I mean, that is, no, what's the other?
general forms, the guide.
What's that?
Future years.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't show all the uses. This just says refer to the Route 5 study.
Oh, great, yeah.
But,
Well, I mean, yeah, I think,
Cause that's what's driving this, is trying to get this cleaned up for the P O C D, correct?
getting a vision, get your 10-year plan and what you want it to look like. So mapping that out.
so if somebody came in and said that they wanted to do a change and they wanted to take this, I don't know, I'm not sure what parcel this is.
Just put that.
61. Trying to pick a really bad example to illustrate the point. Let's say any of these parcels, if somebody came in and wanted to, right here, this green piece, they came in and said, oh, it's Route 5, we want to change it to industrial, right? We want to do a zone change from this, and we have this little white parcel, single family, there's a house, and we have this farm here. We're going to take this and we want to purchase it all. We want to develop it as industrial. We want to do Parkside 2, Silverman 2. You know, in the eyes of the statute, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to pick up your P O C D and
That's not our vision for what Route 5 should have.
right. You have to consider the P O C D. You don't have, you know, and there may be a lot of reasons why you disregard something in the P O C D. Maybe the market has changed, COVID happens, real estate market changes. There's a lot of that, but the P O C D is supposed to, number one, give applicants an understanding of where you're trying to go, so they don't bring nonsense to the commission and ask approvals for stuff. But number two, it's supposed to give you some of that backing, so you're not just sitting here having to stare an applicant in the face and say, we decided no, because the answer is no. It's supposed to create consistency, because, you know, the commission will change in 10 years, right?
Well, I mean, to your point though, our industrial park is pretty much at capacity. There's some room, but
Yeah,
maybe not for 10 years.
right.
So
Yeah.
at some point, somebody may have to step forward and say,
So
I need a building.
where does the
Where's-
commission wanna have
yeah, where's the
this
next
industrial use?
industrial park go? Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, again, what land is out there? There is none. So now somebody has to have the vision of, I'm gonna buy up and aggregate a bunch of properties. So
Knock 'em
a
down.
lot of that's gonna depend on what's available at what cost, you know? So it may be in the middle of a whole bunch of
Well, isn't that how
residential
the park
properties.
started in the first place?
Yeah.
A bunch
Or
of
you're
people
gonna do it off
chipped in
140.
about
The
consolidate.
B3, so.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Change.
140
Change it.
would need more infrastructure brought in, but
Gosh, John.
Well, that
Would.
nothing kills that over here, dude.
Wow. Wow.
So everybody forgets, don't forget too, Southern Auto, all those years, that was the lifeline of this town, was Southern Auto.
Right.
It was. It definitely kept us down afloat for a long, long, long time.
I think we should encourage more restaurants.
But I mean, he's getting a little bit smaller and smaller and smaller.
Multi-family.
It'd be nice to see those parking lots go to
Yeah.
commercial.
Restaurants will come.
Whatever, yeah.
Multi.
I mean, that is very much a
Sidewalks
theme,
might come too.
Yeah.
repurposing large parking lots. Pet centers.
Yeah.
Right, you could, I mean, there's a lot, not, most of them are owned by him, but there's others. That you could easily get multiple commercial buildings on an existing, you could reduce your coverage, you could put up a building on an existing asphalt parking lot that, on all the aerials is empty. It would be a really good reuse of some of that.
I agree.
Yeah. I thought about that with the old Walmart coming down,
Yeah.
and that would be a good mixed use spot too.
So that kind of all ties back into allowing almost anything, just come and give us an idea, give us a proposal. You'd hate the idea of turning away business, and if somebody can make a good case for to develop an underutilized piece of property or aggregating properties, and as long as we have the right amount of protection of thy neighbors and buffers and things like that, transition zones, and
Drop.
depending upon the use again,
Well, and a lot of that stuff, again, is gonna be. There's some of that which is unavoidable, right? We've had people come here and just speak during public hearings and they say that they can hear the backup alarms on trucks, which are
5 miles.
extremely far away, right? So even if you have an industrial use that's 500 feet or 1,000 feet away from a residential property, if it's a February evening, there's snow on the ground, they're gonna hear it. And so the question is, that's when you start thinking about which direction do you lean? You obviously understand the issues associated with that if you're a single family home on Route 5, but also, it's gotta be something, right? And so you give preference to those existing residential homes by reducing some of those potential allowed uses, or you say, we really want to move away from the residential homes on here because it's Route 5, it's a commercial corridor. We certainly can't put it out on the east side of town. So we've got to have them here in the place that already mass trucks and is already signalized and,
I don't think anybody's built a residential home on Route 5 in the last 30 years, probably.
not single family,
New construction.
No,
not single family, no.
Taking some down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They took
You
that.
guys have any kind of comments, questions, suggestions? I feel like I'm
I
dominating
think
the
you should push it,
conversation here.
push it from commercial, getting away from, like we're doing, getting away from residential on Route 5.
Single family.
Yep,
Yeah, I think you
Yep.
could allow multis.
multi,
How do you get that point out though?
get rid of car dealerships.
You gotta let it be room that
Where
you can,
Through zoning.
Yeah, and you can say anything that's now zoned for single family could be
right,
changed to multifamily, right? So if someone's looking to do multiple units.
there's a lot of potential, but people don't realize that the potential can be used, like you say, rezoning.
So right now, TC5 doesn't allow for residential. So that would be a big shift to say you could take your residential and make it multifamily.
There seems to be something again, where you clustered in there.
Mhm.
Big
Multifamily,
schools, right? The high schools right in there.
multifamily at what threshold, minimum or maximum? Because you could put a two-family.
Just
in
a
multifamily,
duplex, yeah.
Or are you
It could be
talking
like
a 100-unit complex? I mean, the larger complexes probably have a better opportunity
I think so too.
versus
Yeah.
versus a single.
Because
Versus
they
a single
redevelop
duplex,
it
yeah.
to make
Big.
buffers and to make white zones and allowable transport and safer in and out
Right.
approaches. So probably larger multifamily would be my recommendation.
Something else that I think might be less of a head scratcher. We heard a lot about this a couple of years ago during an application which you had long public hearings for. I think you probably can follow where I am. We have current land use, current zone, versus
Future.
current land use. So this is a case where very clearly, much more consistently, you have single family homes in a place where the zoning regulations say this is supposed to be commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
5 villages.
So, I think that again is, at the very least, all those property owners are non-conforming, right? Their
Right.
single family homes are non-conforming. So that's another, I think, an area that you could contemplate.
And all back to residential.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would have any interest of putting commercial in that spot.
Well, they'd be interested.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
Well.
Would it- would
a
it-
tailored kind of way,
yeah,
not a,
not a large scale.
Yeah, I mean, you can do, I work in towns that set the special permit criteria based on size. You can cap things. You can allow for light commercial uses not to exceed 5,000 square feet or
Mhm.
2,000. You don't have to just say, build it to the standards of the building envelope.
But that would apply to all commercial zones, not just this one
No,
commercial, no?
I think
I
you
mean,
could.
You can,
tailor it to fit the different villages or whatever.
because is that even serviced by, there's not serviced by any public utilities there, really, as far as like sewer or water or gas.
Definitely not sewer. I don't know
I don't
about.
think water either, is it?
It's R3, so that's just makes me think it's probably nearby. There's some connection. where the water
Because I
is
mean,
coming.
that'd be even more difficult for industrial development without
Oh, yeah,
public services.
yeah, but I think
It is not within the Connecticut Water Company service area. It's within the
the sewer,
sewer service,
yeah,
but that doesn't,
that doesn't mean the main is there.
Our forefathers had a vision. Vision's gone.
Well, it was a village center.
The village center. Everybody had a village.
So,
Maybe at one point there was a general store there or something.
It probably
was.
yeah,
Sure, post office or
So-
store.
maybe there's a consideration for adopting some type of a village center reg, a mixed use reg that could go in this area, that could go in right out here, something that's sort of a light commercial, more traditional, old school,
Yeah, community service type, yeah.
just small stuff, service related, but we're not talking businesses with, more heavy
Yeah,
traffic.
not your body shop.
Right. I mean, you could have sort of, not a traditional village district, because then you gotta do all kinds of stuff for the state, but more of like that same idea. And just transition some of those zones to something that was much smaller in scale. Because you have, and I know I'm switching back and forth between the zones, but you have, you have the B1 and B2 here. You have it in, obviously in
That's where.
Right here. proper,
That's.
it's right over here.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then swap it.
Which you do have the use there.
So there may be,
Which one is that one there? That's Scantic.
Yep.
And is there any of that currently being used as commercial at all?
let me go back to. Okay, here we go. So there's current zoning. Just that one piece. Which is. oh, I
That's
don't
the
have a
historic
version.
society.
Yeah, that's a historic society.
Oh.
Yeah, historical
So
society.
everything else is single family.
Yeah.
And again, assessor has it as that. I know you could argue that that's a traditional business use. I mean, it's kind of this kind of quasi, I don't know what you call it, but it's not. I don't think somebody would buy that and say, okay, I'm gonna go and put my,
I think
more traditional, like commercial center in there,
it's closer to a private club.
recreation or something. But something that you could.
and there's some similar language to that already in the P O C D that we can look at and make some suggestions for. The other thing we could do is come back with suggested, we could take a good look at this. Come back to the commission with areas that might be suitable for industrial.
For future.
Future.
Because,
You know, like 10 years out.
so, yeah, somewhere down the road, there's gonna have to be another industrial park somewhere in town.
Start going down Newbury, there's some stuff in Newbury too, that could be usable, 140.
Yeah, there are.
Did you get enough feedback for us to?
I think so.
See that the town of East Hartford has just started the process to adopt a moratorium on gas stations.
Gas stations, go.
They have one, I think the town is 17 square miles and they have more than 17 gas stations.
Really? Hometown. Yes.
I'm not sure you can adopt a moratorium on gas stations, but
They're feeding Buckland.
Period.
Yeah.
they're just saying no more.
Going up from Home Depot, Glastonbury.
Right up through,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. They're saying that they want to understand the long-term implications of all that fuel in the ground, basically.
Yes, that could be cancer.
You can go to AST's,
Right. And paint them to look like animals.
sound vaults. Yes.
All right.
Neil?
Draft order is the next item.
Yes, the draft order. Remember the outline from the last meeting? It has now become a document. Draft form
Yeah, I got it.
that I want to read it into the record, if you don't mind. And this has been, reviewed by outside counsel. So the order, it's an order of the Planning and Zoning Commission for your consideration. It would be going to the, applicant for the gravel pit solar expansion and the representatives. Regarding docket number 492A, gravel pit solar certificate of environmental compatibility and public need for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a 120 megawatt AC solar photovoltaic electric generating facility on 8 parcels generally located to the east and west of the Amtrak and Connecticut Rail Line, south of Apothecaries Hall Road, and north of South Windsor Town Boundary in East Windsor, Connecticut, and associated electrical interconnection. Reopening of this certificate based on changed conditions pursuant to the Connecticut General Statutes, Section 4-181A. The Connecticut Siting Council, the CSC, provided the town of East Windsor town notice that it approved reopening. I'll get every word in. It approved the reopening of docket 492A regarding a proposed amendment to a certificate seeking a 30 megawatt expansion to an existing 130 megawatt solar facility by several entities collectively referred to as gravel pit solar. Pursuant to the authority granted to the local zoning commissions under General Statutes Section 16-50X subsection D to regulate and restrict the proposed location of an electric generating facility, the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission hereby issues the following assessment and order. Assessment. The purpose of the East Windsor zoning regulations is to impart, to promote public health, safety, general welfare, encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the town with reasonable consideration for the land's suitability for a particular use and for the existing or planned character of the area. Protect agricultural uses within the town, protect historic resources within the town, encourage energy conservation, the use of solar and other renewable forms of energy and energy efficient patterns of development, and guide the growth of the town in accordance with the Plan of Conservation and Development, PFCD. The commission is required to consider the P O C D when it acts on certain applications such as special permits. The purpose of the East Windsor P O C D is in part to serve as a planning tool for guiding the future development of a community and provide guidance for the overall conservation, preservation, and growth of the town. To achieve this, the P O C D established the vision for the town's future as one where the rural, village, agricultural, and business character that defines the town must be preserved to keep the town an attractive place to live, work, and play. Residential and village area development must be carefully guided to ensure compatibility with community character and allow the town to prepare for the impacts of future growth and an aging population. Economic development must be retained and expanded to support the community with services, jobs, and taxes while remaining sensitive to the community's environment and quality of life. The primary strategies to achieve the town's visions are to preserve more open space, preserve community assets, cultural, historical, and agricultural, preserve the rural character of the town. For the Scantic, Windsorville, and Melrose areas, develop village plans for each of these areas to establish architectural guidelines, lot requirements, and densities to preserve the historic character, preserve the rural agricultural character, and enhance the architectural character, respectively, of each of these areas. The 2026 revision of the POCD is underway. The 2025 community survey, sorry. I read 25 somewhere else. I'm worried about this 24. The 2024. That's how the brain works.
You got 4 people correctly. You have 20.
I'm already.
At least they're following the.
At least we're listening.
Yeah, thank you. In 2024, community surveys conducted to inform revisions to the POCD placed loss of farmland and open space among the top concerns of residents, with 22% of the people who responded to the survey stated that grid scale solar was an issue they were most worried about over the next 10 years. 8% of the people who responded to the survey stated loss of farmland was an issue that they were most worried about over the next 10 years. And 45% of people were very concerned over the loss of farmland and open space. The town's zoning regulations includes the following provisions regarding solar. Grid scale solar as a use. A review of the uses allowed by the regulations is listed in sections 402, permitted uses in residential and agricultural districts, and 502, permitted uses in business and industrial districts, demonstrates that commercial and/or grid-scale solar facilities are not permitted as a principal use in any zoning district, and therefore are prohibited in accordance with Chapter 2, Section 200, General Interpretations, 200.1, prohibited if not permitted. 200.1, prohibited if not prohibited. That's hard to say. Prohibited if not permitted. Use of land, buildings, or structures not clearly permitted in the various zoning districts is prohibited. Activities not clearly permitted in the regulations are prohibited. Solar energy systems are referenced in other sections of the zoning regulations, including sections 301.4 and 601.8, where solar energy systems such as rooftop solar and solar canopies are addressed as ancillary to the principal use. The commission considers the existing and approved grid scale solar projects as a principal use of the land in which they are sited. Fundamental conflicts. The commission finds the expansion proposed under docket 492A conflicts with the regulations and the POCD. Specifically, Chapter 4 of the regulations establishes residential zoning districts to provide for residential neighborhoods that are in harmony with the natural features of the land and the needs of East Windsor residents, both present and future. The agricultural zones are also considered residential zones. However, agricultural zones are also intended to promote present and future agricultural uses. This is evidenced by the loss of farmland. The expansion proposed in docket 492A would add to the 318 acres of prime farmland which have been or will be lost to grid scale solar projects approved by the Connecticut Siting Council in the town. Of the 498.3 acres of project area, 94.1 acres of agricultural fields will be dedicated to panels and other site features such as access roads and fences. All the parcels identified in the project area located east of Wapping Road contain prime farmland soils. The cumulative impact of this project being cited, along with those already approved within the town, would result in the loss of more than 400 acres of prime farmland. Number two, loss of habitat. The existing gravel pit solar array has a large footprint that encroaches upon the riverine habitat of Ketch Brook. The proposed areas of expansion to the north of Ketch Brook, located off Dempsey Road, sits entirely in a natural diversity area as depicted by the state's GIS layer. The project proposes to clear cutting more than 440 acres of mixed deciduous coniferous upland habitat, although no listed species were found on the parcels. Section 6.2.2.1 of the project narrative states that the project area contains the potential to support 20 listed species on the state's natural diversity database. The expansion includes the installation of new arrays to surround and encroach upon the Wapping Bog that is held in conservation by the Northern Connecticut Land Trust. Loss of rural character. The expansion of grid scale solar in and around the village of Windsorville will have an irreparable and negative impact on visual aesthetics of the area, which conflicts with the POCD's strategic vision to maintain the character of the 5 distinct villages that make the town unique. 6% of the town's total land area is approved for grid scale solar development, all of which are in the Windsorville section of town. This thwarts the town's strategic vision, which will only be exacerbated by the proposed modification. 4, cumulative effect of utility scale solar. The town of East Windsor hosts 142.98 megawatts of utility scale solar. This is 19.85% of the total utility scale solar approved in Connecticut. The town and its residents are impacted disproportionately by the significant amount of utility scale solar within its legal boundaries, particularly when compared to all other municipalities in the state. This disproportionate impact is measured in part by the loss of farmland, the loss of habitat, and the significant impact to the rural character of the town. The dramatic increase of utility scale solar in town led the commission to pass a resolution on grid scale solar. The proposed expansion triggers all of the concerns raised by the commission when it adopted the resolution regarding grid scale solar cited on agricultural and residentially zoned land. The commission finds the siting of grid scale solar in agricultural or residential zones to be inconsistent with the town's plan of conservation and development and regulations, and undermines the vision. I wanted to say something else, and undermines the vision and goals of the town to maintain its rural agricultural based identity. This resolution, passed on April 28th, 2023, was formally submitted to the Connecticut Siting Council on May 4th, 2023, and is attached for reference. The order. here's the meat. The order. Right? In consideration of the above findings, coupled with the fact that commercial grid scale solar energy systems, such as the proposed extension to gravel pit solar, are not listed as a permitted use in section 402, permitted uses in residential and agricultural districts, or in section 502, permitted uses in business and industrial districts. The gravel pit solar entities and its corporate family are hereby restricted from developing its expansion project. This order is hereby issued. This happens by majority or unanimous vote of the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission.
I like it.
All right, the only thing I would ask is that since the suggestions we made to our regs and everything, that we double check to make sure all the citations match for which parts of the regs that is, because I hate to have one wrong notation in there to kind of sidebar this whole thing.
Do we need to do that?
No, when you finalize this thing.
Okay.
Because you're gonna make those changes, right? The ones that
Yes,
talk-
but those changes, this reflects what's currently
What's current.
in.
Okay, so we don't need that prohibited or not allowed verbiage or? Is that,
That's in here. The way I've written it is talking to the fact that,
but I thought that didn't exist currently in our regs.
no, it's in there, the prohibited,
Okay.
that's in section 2 in the front of the regs.
That's, okay. All right,
Yeah.
then.
You might, just to be sure, you might as well read it again.
That's cruel.
That's worse.
I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
Talking all over myself.
Send it, send it.
I'm good with the way it is. I love it. I think it's a great job.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay, then,
Where do I sign?
I would, well, first thing we need to put it to a vote. So, all those in favor of, proceeding with this, order? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. You may proceed with issuing the order.
Just check on under 3. I mean, it says Winderville instead of Windsorville, Village of Windsorville. Expansion of grid scale solar in and around the village of Windsorville.
Windsorville,
There's, yeah, join.
page 1.
Anyway,
Page 4 of 4.
top line.
Indoor.
Windsorville, right?
Winderville.
Winderville?
Winterville.
Winderville.
Okay. The last item we have is correspondence. Docket number 492A, gravel pit solar. Okay, so
We know what that is. So the public hearing date's been set for 492A. It is October 9th. And, commission, just to your chair, received notice on how to participate in the hearing. This has been posted on the Solar Facts page. The town's website, which can be found on the front page ladder. You scroll down to see the little sun.
Sure.
Sure.
I didn't know it was.
If you scroll
right.
down, you see the sun?
There on the left.
Solar facts.
We've been adding the links.
So this memo, and if when it's live links in here. Folks sign up to testify
Okay, but
For the
you don't
public
have
hearing.
to pre-register to
You-
join.
you-
the-
There's a
Zoom meeting?
evidentiary hearing at 2:30 in the afternoon on the 9th. Or 2 o'clock on the 9th. And so you can't speak unless you're a party.
Okay, you can-
But then in
you
the
can listen on
evening,
it.
yeah, you can listen in on it. And they show you how to attend. And he's,
6:30 public comment.
yeah, public comments, you have to, by midnight the day before, have signed up to participate. Just shows you how to do it.
This one here. This is the same one that we reviewed last meeting, no? Right, so also in your packet, you have a letter.
Yeah, there you go. I'll have to do that.
Okay,
This letter is addressed to Michael Kowalski, Chairman of the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission, 11 Rye Street, Northbrook, Connecticut, 06016. It's requesting to regulate and restrict Siding Council docket 492A gravel pit solar. The letter is dated June 4th, 2025, and it is from Jason Bauza, for Selectmen. And it reads, I am requesting that the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission issue a regulate and restrict order denying the proposed expansion. I make this request for the following reason. Inconsistency with East Windsor Plan of Conservation and Development. The state requires municipalities to submit to the Office of Policy and Management local plans of conservation and development every 10 years. East Windsor's POCD was last updated in 2016 before any grid solar projects were cited in the town of East Windsor. The town is currently in the statutorily required process of updating its POCD now. And the results of the constituent engagement conducted thus far associated with that project have been substantial and informative. When asked what residents were most concerned about over the next 10 years, 69% of the 330 respondents listed either open space, solar, or overdevelopment of rural areas as their top concern. It is fair to reason that the state should consider the emergent sentiment in the town's POCD, which is clear, rather than rely on a document written nearly 10 years ago. Established position of the town concerning grid scale solar expansion. The town of East Windsor, through both its Board of Selectmen and its Planning and Zoning Commission, have affirmatively voted not to permit additional commercial solar projects in the town of East Windsor. Those actions by both boards have been communicated to the Connecticut Siding Council, but the Siding Council is under no obligation to consider the wants of host municipalities, nor in our case, have they demonstrated any willingness to do so. Cumulative impact on the community. The cumulative impact of grid scale solar photovoltaic systems has become an issue of grave concern in the town. The town has been compelled, not of our own choosing, to host a considerable percentage of the cited grid scale solar projects in the state of Connecticut. Only a small handful of communities are being forced to carry the weight of the state's renewable energy goals. Similarly, 20 years ago, a small handful of communities were being forced to host all the trash to energy facilities in Connecticut. At that time, those cities successfully pushed back on the siting of trash to energy projects in only a small number of urban areas. Now, a similar burden is being pushed onto more rural communities like ours. In fact, the Connecticut Siding Council has cited 142 megawatts in town to date, consuming more than 1,000 acres. That is 20% of the total approved megawattage in the entire state, according to the Connecticut Siding Council. Furthermore, the aerial mapping outlining the most recent proposed expansions of docket 492A, as well as the conceptual for salt box solar, show the further consummation of a tremendous amount of acreage in the village of Windsorville. This clearly demonstrates, from a visual perspective, a cumulative impact on the community. My research indicates that there is no statewide standard of review for the siting of solar projects, but rather that the siting council uses town-by-town standards. Any reasonable person would agree that 169 different standards really equate to no standard at all. Further exemplifying the Connecticut Siting Council, that the Connecticut Siting Council is not adhering to their statutory obligation to consider cumulative impacts on our town. Conflicts with existing zoning regulations. A review of the uses allowed by the East Windsor zoning regulations finds that commercial and or grid scale solar facilities are not permitted in any district and therefore are prohibited in accordance with Chapter 2, Section 200, General Interpretation 200.1, prohibited if not permitted. Will of the people. A citizen-led effort to collect signatures petitioning the Connecticut Siting Council in opposition to the proposed amendment in docket 492A has collected more than 1,200 signatures as of today. They have demonstrated in a clear, convincing manner that the townspeople are opposed to the proposed expansion. The Planning and Zoning Commission should heed their wishes and reject the proposed expansion. For all these reasons, I encourage the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission to exercise its authority under Connecticut General Statutes 16-50 and deny the proposed expansion, not only based on its detrimental effect on adjoining property, but also based on its detrimental cumulative effect on the town. Very truly yours, Jason E. Bauza, First Selectman.
Pretty much outlines the action we took this evening. Thank you. All right. Nothing under business meeting. Yeah, no need for an executive session. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss in front of the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Wayne. Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:22.
I can't from my.